men today are the children of this one man who lived 150,000 years ago, approximately. Now, Christians generally they take three positions as well. One of their positions is to reject the theory altogether. And those who reject the theory altogether, they have more reasons than Muslims to reject the theory altogether. See, we can count their reasons very quickly. One reason is, oh, no, there. So they have more reasons than Muslims to reject the theory altogether. One reason is that the Bible shows that the earth was created in 6 days and then God rested on the seventh day. The way in which this is described, it's as if we're dealing with 7 days of our regular week. So they cannot allow for a very long period of creation from 13.8 billion years ago until the earth comes to exist, because day one is this, day two is this, day three is this, day six is Adam, day seven God rests, just like Jews are directed to rest on the Sabbath. So the other thing is that the Bible gives a sequence for how things are created, which comes first, second, third, fourth, and so on. And it turns out the trees come before the sun, which creates another problem for interpretation, because without the sun you cannot have photosynthesis. Trees would not survive. Moreover, when it says that Eve was created from the side of Adam, from one of his ribs, and no evolutionary theory is going to accept that. And incidentally, Muslims say that as well, but that's based on a hadith and not on the Quran. And probably that hadith is the product of the Israeliyat. That's what Muslims learned from others, and they thought the Prophet, peace be upon him, said it. It becomes a hadith, but I wouldn't give it much credence. So they have more reasons for rejecting the theory. Now, we're not done, because the Bible says that each creature is reproducing after its own kind. And they take this to mean that you cannot have evolution that changes from one species to another. They could have microevolution, that means within the species there is variation, but you cannot have that the variation continues until suddenly we have a new species as an end result. Everyone must reproduce and remain within their own species. So then we come to the flood of Nuh alayhi salam. And according to the Bible, it's a universal flood all over the world, whereas according to the Quran it is not. The Quran is a punishment in the Quran, it is a punishment for the people of Nuh because they disobeyed the Prophet, they plotted against his life. Allah has no reason to kill off people on another side of the world if they existed. So because it's a universal flood, that means all of the people who are alive must be descendants of those who came out of the ark. And the amount of genetic variation that we have among human beings today makes it impossible for all human beings to be descendants of that of the people who survived from that ark. Moreover, the age problem, and this is what Brother Zonarif is mentioning now. See, according to the Bible, Adam lived for so many years, then he had his first son. And that son lived for so many years, and then he had his son. And he had lived for so many years, and then he had his son. In the King James Version of the Bible, the word for getting a son is begat. So Adam begat Seth, and Seth lived so many years, then he begat his son, and then he lived so many years, and he begat his son. So now people speak of this as adding up all of the begats, because you can add up the ages of the individuals, and now you can calculate back from Isa alayhi salam all the way back to see, when was Adam created? And they work out the date to be 4004 BC. Somebody even said October 23rd at 9 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And in fact, the Jewish calendar still counts from the creation of Adam. So they will tell you this is the year 6,000 and some, since the creation of Adam. Now, when the Christians looked at the theory of evolution, they said we cannot accept it because the theory of evolution is saying human beings existed for so long, and so they want to say no. All of these dates coming from scientists, this is all wrong. That's some Christians. That's one Christian approach. Those are the ones who reject the theory altogether. They don't want anything of the theory. They're going to hold on, God created, somehow the scientists are fooling people and whatever, all right? Some of the Christians get over this age problem by saying we're not going to take everything so literally. We're going to, I agree with the scientists that the earth is so old and all of that, but we cannot accept that Adam was also part of that creation. And moreover, we are deeply suspicious of saying that species were, they still have the speciation problem. They want microevolution, not macro. A third group of scientists, I held up two of their books earlier today, and I mentioned their website. What is that website, those who were here? What is the website? Biologos.org, right? Biologos.org. Two of their books here from some of their scholars that expound that view. So they take the view that we don't have to deny the theory of evolution, we can embrace it all, we can be scientists, we can explain the theory just like any other scientist would, we can teach the theory to our students and so on. Our only addition to that is to say that it doesn't happen without God. It is God who does the whole thing. He is the creator, and he is creating through this process. So they coined the term evolutionary creation. Some of them said we don't even want the term to be the other way. We don't want to say theistic evolution, because if we say theistic evolution, we make evolution the main word, the noun, and then theistic is the adjective. We're talking about evolution, but which kind of evolution? We don't like it that way. We're not going to make evolution the main word. We're going to make creation the main word. So we're going to say evolutionary creation. Yeah. So creation now is the noun. That's our main point. As believers, we believe in creation. But creation, which kind of creation? It's an evolutionary type of creation. So that's what they want to say. So three different choices among them as well. Right? And we also have three different choices before us. So Brother Zunarif, in Islam, we should not have this dating problem. We should not, like we have a different dating problem. I know, we don't allow boys and girls to date, right? But this date of the world, it's not our problem. But it becomes our problem when our mufassirun, commentators on the Quran, and our qasas, the storytellers, they borrow the stories from the other nations, and then they present it as part of Muslim belief. Oh, Noah alayhi salam lived so many generations after Adam, for example. Like it's from the other sources. So we should be watchful about that, and we should not reassert the same things. But that's why it's important to place the Quran in its primary importance and see the general picture that comes from there, and start seeing how the Quran by itself might be reconciled with what we know from science, and then you bring in other similarly reconcilable information. Okay, any other questions from this side? Dr. Selina, I'll come back to you, my brother. Yes?
I'm sorry, I wasn't here in the morning, but the question I have is, assuming that we take this evolution theory, or we accept this scientific theory, the evolution process occurs in heaven, or before Adam was put on earth, or it was... That's how. What is the time frame in which you say that evolution occurs here on Earth? When he's already a man, or how does that work?
Okay. So this morning before you came, I actually addressed this at some point today. I know I addressed this, and I addressed it by referring to Dr. Mustafa Mahmood's book. In his book, Understanding the Quran: A Contemporary Approach, Dr. Mustafa Mahmood addresses the same question, and he says that when the Quran says "Ihbitu minha jami'a," all of you get down from here together. So typically Muslims have taken that to mean that Adam alayhi salam was sent down from above. However, as I mentioned, in the tafsir of Tafsir al-Razi, called Mafatih al-Ghaib, or also referred to as al-Tafsir al-Kabir. So in that tafsir, Al-Imam al-Razi rahimahullah mentions that there are two possibilities about this. One is that Adam alayhi salam was in heaven and then sent down to earth. And that too leads to two other, that itself contains two possibilities. If he was in heaven, which heaven was it? Like the heaven that we're all hoping to go to finally as a place of our reward, or some other garden which is in heaven, but is not the final place of our abode. So those are two opinions. Now, on the other side, there is an opinion that goes back all the way to Mujahid, who was a student of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, who said that it doesn't mean from heaven down to earth. It means from a garden here on earth to outside of the garden. And it doesn't have to mean up and down. In terms of direction, because an expression is like this. Yeah, you heard that explanation, right? So yeah, so it doesn't have to be from up and down. So those who want to reconcile with the theory of evolution, they probably will not insist that it's from up to down. They would say that it was from a garden here on earth, and they're being expelled from the garden, right?
I think that's the same theory with the Christian, okay?
Say again?
That belief is the same belief with the Christian.
Yes. As I mentioned, the Christians, despite whatever problems they have, as I mentioned before, their Bible has it that Adam alayhi salam and Eve were placed in a garden, which is ma bayna an-nahrayn, as they say in Arabic, that which is between the Tigris and Euphrates River, which means somewhere in what we call Iraq today. Okay. And sometimes I think it through, and because it says that Adam and Eve were there in the garden, and if that's the place that everybody is desiring to go back to in the Christian conception, because they say out of Eden, like we got kicked out because of the sin of Adam, right? So if that's the conception that we're supposed to all go back to the garden, imagine the entire human population now and forever, everybody going back to fit between those two rivers. It's not going to work easily, right? So anyhow, in the Muslim conception, I don't see then that it is necessary to insist that they were in a heaven above. And one can add more to this. One can add also that when the material to create Adam is said to be taken from so many different soils, as is mentioned in some of the narratives, then it looks like it's an earthly type of creature we're making right from the very inception. But I wouldn't insist on this last part either. I would just say that those who want to reconcile with the theory would want to argue that it's not from up to down, probably right here on earth. And those, of course, who are comfortable with the traditional way of viewing things will continue to say that it's from up to down, and therefore this is another reason for thinking that the theory is all bogus. Okay? All right. Any other questions? Yes, my brother. Sorry to put you on hold here. Let me give you the microphone. Yeah.
Yeah, Doc, I would like to ask about this question, since we are talking about the theory of evolution. We're talking about the first view, some of them is rejected on. The second is about the issue when Adam was sent down literally from the heaven, if I may correct, please correct me. And the third is, I forget. However, Doc, can we use the ayah of chapter 2, verse 64 to 65, that it was been mentioned of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that to those who transgress the Sabbath became an apes, and some of them explain it that the Quran was being teach of evolution because of this ayah. That's all, Doc.
So you say that some people are saying that the Quran actually teaches evolution because of this ayah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what I'm more familiar with is that some Muslims simplistically will say, okay, so you just discovered this creature who is like an ape, but also like a human being. They may say, okay, maybe these are one of the people that Allah transformed to be apes. So how do we understand this ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kunu kiratatan khasi'in, be as apes despised? Again, I have to count on Mujahid. Apparently, Mujahid had some rational way of looking at the Quran and its interpretation. So he said, according to Imam al-Razi again, Imam al-Razi's tafsir is a very good tafsir to read, and I can safely recommend it in this country because Imam al-Razi was a great Shafi'i scholar, and his tafsir is an excellent tafsir. And those who like to see things logically laid out, like myself, I love this tafsir. Some of us complain and they say, the tafsir, it gets you lost from one point to another. You can't even remember where you started. Because he goes so logically, like he says, okay, there are three possibilities here. Possibility number one, under this, you also have, under this category of this possibility, you have, also three possibilities. And then, as we're dealing with these three possibilities under possibility number one, let's look at possibility number two here. So possibility number two, under the first one, so 2 of 3 under the first one. So this one also have two different possibilities. And if we go possibility number 1 here, of these two, that too has 2 different possibilities. So he goes possibility within possibility within possibility. And yes, those who are unable to follow will get all tangled with this and they give it up. They don't want to read this tafsir anymore. And I have to confess that even me, sometimes I have to put a lot of work in trying to trace which view is he dealing with right now. Okay, but the fact that he could have laid this out in such an organized form shows the breadth and depth of his thinking and his ability to retain that all in his own mind as well, because primitive time, they didn't have as much paper as we have now, and the wastebasket nearby, everything was precious, right? And then nowadays we'd have to put things in a computer, and trace the lines of organizational chart. Idea number 1 leads to 2 different ideas, and each one leads to 2 different ideas, and so on. Our computers will help us here, but how he did it, it's amazing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him. That doesn't mean I agree with him in everything. I mean, he's a human being too. He's not God, right? We know that for granted. So I just wanted to let you know that. About this particular point, he mentioned, this is the question about kunu kiratatan khasi'in, become apes, become as apes despised. He doesn't say become apes, become as apes. Despised. And here we know from the grammar, the way the word ends, it's ikhradatan. It ends with the tanween of fatha. It means become as this, despised. So Mujahid said it doesn't mean they transform from humans to something else, which we call ape. It means that they became ape-like in their behavior. And it doesn't even, I would take it a step further and say it doesn't even have to mean that they became like that. This could be an expression of Allah's displeasure with them. When the expression is, you want to reject the teachings from me, so what do you want to be, like apes? Okay, be like apes, right? So, I mean, they're human beings, but Allah now despises them because of their rejection of the message. But even if you take it the way Mujahid says, it doesn't mean that they became physically transformed, but that their behavior now is different from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, and that is classified as an ape-like behavior. Okay? But if one wanted to take it literally, one would speak of a transformation. These were transformed from human beings to ape-like creatures, and then one would say, okay, some of these bones we're finding may have been that. But that, as I said, is only a simplistic conclusion, because we're dealing not with only some bones, we're dealing with a vast array of bones. We're dealing with Peking man, Java man, the Laetoli kid, fossils from so many different parts of the world, with many human-like creatures, each one varied and different from the other. So we cannot take a simplistic view here. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
I just want to get your explanation. Regarding the word God chosen Adam and Noah and all that as mentioned. From my interpretation, the word chosen, there's one way like choose between A, B, C, D. Various variable among all the people chosen. So the question is, if Adam is the only person, chosen from who? Yeah, that's the point, right? But but the concept here is messenger. Now we understand that Adam sleep, forgotten, and fall into sin. So can a chosen person, a messenger, fall into sin? That's the question.
Okay, so this is a broader question about the isma of the Anbiya, and here we have to tread carefully because people have killed and died over questions like this, right? So we don't want to like relive old controversies here. But when we speak of the isma of Anbiya, I think it is safe to say that we are not saying that the Anbiya are so like non-human. They are human, and humans by definition are prone to error. And our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is being spoken to by Allah in the Quran, and we can see that there are occasions when he made like what from the Quranic perspective would have to be termed as a kind of misjudgment. And like when he turned away from the blind man, so the Quran says, Abasa wa tawalla, and ja'ahu al-a'ma. He frowned and turned away because the blind man came to him. So now, in the case of Adam alayhi salam, we have to remember that now humankind is in its infancy. If one takes this evolutionary view, then human beings are developing. They're developing from Homo habilis to Homo erectus. They're becoming Homo sapiens, which means wise man. So some of the first wise people, some of the first Homo sapiens, are now in the infancy of humankind. And infants are excused for so many things, right? Even though we're taking them, that's our kid and smart kid and whatever, but they're excused. Even though they become teenagers, now they have the age of responsibility, but they're still learning to a certain extent, so they're still excused. Right? So if Adam alayhi salam was one of the earliest Homo sapiens, and he is learning, then he has an excuse to make a misjudgment. And the misjudgment, the way that Shaitan put it to him, taking the Muslim story on this, is not, hey, commit this sin. Some Mufassirun say that Shaitan is promising him that by living forever, he will continue to enjoy the company of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forever. Whereas if he dies, it doesn't look too good. So it may be something put to him in a good way. And then what specifically was the sin? That too requires a little bit more of discussion, but we don't have a lot of time for that. Dr. Mustafa Mahmood offers the possibility that the fruit that he was being called upon to, led to eat from, that this was an aphrodisiac. Again, they're in their infancy, humankind, in a way, it's already sanctioned from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is your wife, but he doesn't know the full story, and he takes from that tree, and that leads to the reproduction of humans. Now, according to Dr. Mustafa Mahmood, this would explain why, when the Quran was telling them, La taqraba hadhihi shajar, do not you two approach the tree. But after the eating from the tree, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing them in the plural, probably because now there is progeny. So now the Quran says, Ihbitu minha jami'a, get down all of you from here together. So now it's plural, because in Arabic you have singular, dual, and plural, right? So now, if to continue the same address, speaking to the two of them, the address might have been dual. You two of you get down from here, but now it's plural. That means more than two. So where's the more than two? It's the two plus their progeny. That's Dr. Mustafa Mahmood's interpretation. That interpretation is a suggestion, I would take it. I wouldn't say that this is a necessary interpretation, but it shows that there is more. There is a lot of things to look at and to discuss. And because this is a new discussion, naturally, a lot of the suggestions will remain tentative. And there will be some parts for us to figure out and to fine tune. And this could be one of those points to look at in a little bit more of a careful manner. All right? Yes, my sister.
I don't quite understand. According to this timeline, so we can see that Adam was created at some point of the timeline. So he procreated with the progeny of the Homo sapiens. Is that correct? So can we assume to say that Adam was not the first creation, or what is it?
Okay. So, in looking at it this way, so we said that there are three views, right? And you see this spelled out on your paper. On the last page of your paper, there's a summary. The handout for today says that now we're dealing with three views. In fact, I misspelled. I left out the word H for three. So the third paragraph from the end. It says, hence we have here three views to choose from. Either we debunk the theory altogether, or we accept it except for the creation of Adam, and or thirdly, we accept it even in the case of Adam, right? So we have three views. So, and the view that we reject it altogether, we're not going to accept anything from evolution. We go by the old things we've always said. Allah created Adam. This is fresh theory of evolution. We don't have to bother with. Second view, Allah created everything by evolution except for Adam. He was created from scratch. If one takes that view, one variation of that view, as explained by Jalajil, as we illustrated, is to say that there could have been Homo sapiens before Adam, but Adam is created as a new line of Homo sapiens. He begins a new line of Homo sapiens. His children are Homo sapiens. There were already Homo sapiens before him, and his children could have intermarried with the existing Homo sapiens. So that's the middle view. The last view takes the theory of evolution as it is, doesn't argue against it, but says that while the theory of evolution is speaking about natural selection, we're speaking about divine selection. It's not nature that does the things and decides who will survive. It is Allah who is deciding who will survive. This is the system that He has created to generate the best possible creatures in this natural process. And so that's the evolutionary creation theory. Yeah. Okay?
What does the word Adam mean in the Quran?
The word Adam actually means something like red in Hebrew. Adam means red in Hebrew. And in Arabic it means something like black. Yeah, I was going to say that, and then we said it coincidentally. So I have to look into that a little bit more. It's not so very clear to me in my mind now. That's interesting that you raised that question. I'm curious to look at it some more. Maybe if tomorrow we have a moment, maybe I'll have something to say about this. I'll try to look at it overnight.
I read somewhere.
Okay, hold on. Let's set the mic, because everybody involved in this discussion. And at the same time, I need to know, sisters, do you have any questions? Because we only have 10 minutes, and then we're gonna be ending our session today. So if you have a question, now is the time. Yeah, and I want to give you preference because I don't want you to feel that I'm just letting the brothers dominate the conversation here. All right, you're okay? Any questions? Yeah? No? Okay. So, any questions, brothers? Otherwise, we go back to Brother Fauzi. Any questions? Okay, back to Brother Fauzi. Yeah.
Okay, I read somewhere that Adam named his wife Hawa because she is come from a living.
Yeah.
Come from a living.
Yeah, so it's not so clear why. That's the Bible. The Bible says that Adam named his wife Hawa, and because she will be the mother of all living things. And then maybe the Mufassirun give the explanation you just mentioned. But all of this is speculation. There is a whole study that comes under the category of a word, etiology. And the stories are referred to as etiological stories. What's an etiological story? An etiological story is a story that is generated to explain how things are. Now, I tell you something about myself. I was I was raised in a village called Annandale. I was actually born in the city, and then my parents lived in the village, so that's where I lived all my life. So we went to school in Annandale, and one of our teachers once explained that the name Annandale, where I was raised and my school was, comes from the joining of two names, Anne and Dale. And it has to do something with two English girls who had something of importance in that area. One was Anne, the other was Dale, and hence Annandale, Anne and Dale. Now, I don't know if that story is true, but if that story is not true, then this is one of those etiological stories. A story that people generate to explain how things are. Things already are the way the village already has its name. Now you're trying to explain how that name came about. And sometimes a fictitious story is generated because people suppose it may have been like that, and so on. Like we're Anne and Dale. That looks very much like two names, Anne and Dale. Why Anne and Dale? Maybe there was an Anne and a Dale, and they both have some importance. So people like surmise like this. So in a similar way, people have surmised a lot of things from the given fact already. So, the rib story. Why are women so crooked? Well, she must have been created from the rib. The rib is crooked, right? That's why women are crooked. Why are women bearing children in pain? Well, because of the first sin. That's a curse that God put on her. That's the biblical story, right? And and on all of this, people imagine that's like this because of that, and they draw the lines of connection, but the connections are all fictitious a lot of times. They're what are called etiological stories. So, perfect one. God, we're resting on the Sabbath. Why are we resting on the Sabbath? Because God rested on the Sabbath. You see, that's called an etiological story. It explains what we're doing now and what is the state of affairs now by imagining a certain past. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Assalamualaikum. Okay, I just can't get the connection between the Africa, Middle East, Europe, Asia. Okay, during Hajj, we told the non-Muslim that Adam met at the Arafah. So how does it connected with the first Africa and then Middle East? So Europe must be the Middle East first, and then is that after Adam made the Eve, they went to the Africa?
Okay. Yeah. So now we have to distinguish between like which one of the three views we want to settle on. And of course, we don't know until we answer all of these questions, right? Because these questions are going to determine for us, like, which view are we going to take now, right? Because if we take this story the way it is told in the classical sources, Adam and Eve were in heaven up above, and after the sin, Allah threw them down to earth in two different places. One in India, and I don't know where the other one was, but then eventually they searched for each other until they found each other at Arafah. That's the traditional story. Okay? How much of this story Muslims need to accept, and how much of this story is subject to adjustment? Now, if it is something said in the Quran, then almost every Muslim will hesitate to say something different, right? Because the Quran for us is the word of Allah Azza wa Jal. But this story is not like this in the Quran. Is it in an authentic hadith like Bukhari and Muslim? I doubt so. I don't remember clearly where the story is from. But even if it is in Bukhari and Muslim, some Muslims will have an attitude towards hadith, which I explained over the last couple of days, that will allow for leaving that aside in order to achieve some greater connection between the pieces of things, between, on the one hand, what the Quran says, and on the other hand, what we know to be like undeniable facts. All right? So that's if it's in Bukhari and Muslim. And where it's from, we have to investigate a little bit further, but I doubt that it's in Bukhari and Muslim. Most likely it's in Tabari's history, the Tarikh of Tabari. It's a massive book with lots of stories, many of them quite fictitious. It's in the Qasasul Anbiya. And the Qasasul Anbiya, remember when we spoke about hadith, we said one of the areas in which people forged things was to make a sensational story. So, sensational story, watch out. It's probably from the storytellers, not from the Prophet, peace be upon him, right? So this is a sensational story. You know, they're dropped down from heaven, two different parts of the world. They are trying to reach each other, searching. Like it's a typical boy meets girl story, right? It's, you know, that's the stuff that makes the movies and so on. Finally, they meet in Arafah, okay? So if you take that story, though, if you say, look, I believe that story, this is what happened, then you cannot go to the third view. And I'm not saying this is the fault, I'm saying that that's the reality. You cannot go to the third view, you have to stay either with the first one or the second one, right? Because now in the second one, you can have Adam as a separate creation, created in heaven, dropped down on earth. They're already Homo sapiens on earth probably, and but Adam is a separate creation. You can take the second view, but you can't take the third one. So if you take the third one, that means you have given up on that story. You're not treating that story as a literal or authentic story, all right? So these are our challenges, to blend together everything we know already and to differentiate between what is the most important thing that we know, what is the most authentic thing that we know, and what are the other things that we thought we knew. But if we insist on all of those things, we cannot advance with the science. There's going to be a continual dichotomy between Islam and science, between Muslims and others. And one of the things I do not like about our current state of affairs is that Muslims often have the attitude that everybody's against us. So like the journalists against us, they're misreporting and misrepresenting us in the media. The heads of state are against us. They're always making laws against us. The Jews are against us. And now the scientists are against us. You see? So I don't want the scientists to be against us. And when we say that all these people are against us, then in our own minds we think we have to be against them. And once we cultivate this idea, it's us versus them, then you can see how it manifests in the next generation, where some people say, yeah, we'll fight the kuffar. And, you know, and then they start setting up an Islamic state somewhere and they want to fight and so on. So it's the us versus them mentality. And every little bit counts. So being against the scientists or having ideas which want us to reject what the scientists are saying and so on, it's not going to end up very, very well. And in fact, one of the Christian writers of these books, they say that, you know, they're talking to fellow Christians. And one of their chief commandments is that you cannot bear false witness. And of course for us too, right? You cannot bear false witness. It's in the Quran, in the 17th chapter, in the 6th chapter, list of commandments. So people try to make a connection between the 10 commandments of the Bible and commandments which are in these 2 chapters of the Quran. And they see the connection. So the Quran is also insisting on these moral principles. You cannot bear false witness. So they're saying that if their fellow Christians, they're telling their fellow Christians, look, if you're saying that the scientists are making up all of this kind of story, then you are bearing false witness against the scientists, because you don't know the subject and they know the subject, and you are accusing them of making up this kind of falsehood, so you're bearing false witness against them. So we ourselves also should not be bearing false witness against the scientists. You know, we should say these are educated people in the field. They're going through their usual process of publishing their ideas in peer-reviewed journals. The ideas that are sound stick. The ideas which are not sound get criticized and cast aside. New ideas come to the fore and so on. It's a continual process of checking, rechecking, and polishing and improving the ideas. So that's a dependable field of inquiry. We should master that field ourselves, embrace it, and make it our own. Al-hikmatu dallatul mu'min. The wisdom is the lost property of the believer, according to a hadith. That means what we do, we embrace that lost wisdom as though it's our own. We lost it, somebody found it, we're going to take it back. That's ours. So we shouldn't be like us versus them. So we have to find a way to reconcile. And to reconcile would mean that sometimes we have to sacrifice the favorite stories that we are familiar with if they're not authentic stories. If there's something in the Quran, we have more reason to hesitate. If it's something in Bukhari and Muslim, we have more reason to hesitate. If it's in the Qasasul Anbiya, well, how did that come there? Where's the chain of narrators? And you know, if it doesn't go back to the Prophet, peace be upon him, where does it go back to? If you're reporting something that probably happened at the inception of Homo sapiens 200,000 years ago, where is the chain of narrators from 200,000 years ago all the way to now? Okay, and so on. So I'm going to close at this point. I know you have further questions. Talk to me individually. I don't want to hold up everyone now. I'm going to put you back over to Brother Abdul Ghaffar to bring the session to a close. And then tomorrow is another day. We're going to talk tomorrow primarily about Isa alayhi salam in the Bible, a story about Isa alayhi salam, and so Muslims can know that story and know how to refer to that story when we're doing da'wah. Be prepared for that, but also be prepared to address anything from over the last few days that we discussed, in case I give you a pop quiz for tomorrow, based on any of those things. So do your homework, read your paper. In fact, I should point out that your day 3 notes given to you has things that I didn't mention today. So if you want a rounder picture to fill it out more and understand the topics that we discussed today even better, read that day 3 handout. Jazakumullah khairan. I see you tomorrow inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, make sure everybody get today's handout. Put your name. And tomorrow, last day of training. Read stories or any sources about Prophet Isa alayhi salam. And we have lastly, make sure you register your name for today at the registration desk. And we have announcement, marketing for GDM.